Hello, everybody. All right, this is exciting. It's time for our live stream halfway through the Multilingual Book Club. I am ecstatic. Just going to hang on for a few minutes here to allow people to arrive. For anybody who's here, can you just tell me, is my audio okay? I'm using this microphone that looks a bit silly in the camera shot. Maybe I can move it. Can you let me know in the chat if the audio is okay? Thank you, MSC. I'm glad you liked the haircut. There are some people who have been asking me for like 2 years to cut my hair. Some people love the long hair. Some people don't care at all. Probably most people don't care at all. But so yeah, some people happy, some people are upset about the haircut. And but I gotta say, my morning is so much shorter now. Cool. Okay, so just to be clear, audio is good. Is it loud enough? Everything is fine? Because last time I tried to use my nice microphone on a live stream, people said I sounded like a chipmunk, which was not ideal. So please just confirm one last time everything sounds good. Haitian Creole. Awesome. That sounds exciting. Okay, thank you very much, Michael or Michael. Really appreciate it. So how is everybody doing? This live stream is honestly probably the first one I've ever done where it's really just about hanging out. You know, of course, we have our Multilingual Book Club that we have been doing together, at least some of us. If you have not been joining in, that's totally fine as well. But so, yeah, the theme of this live stream is it's the halfway point. Hey, Mia, it's so nice to see you. I'm so glad you are able to join the live stream. So yeah, the point of this is, of course, you know, we just reached the halfway point of our book club. So wanted to check in, but it's really just about hanging out. I'd love to hear from everybody how it's been going for you. I'd love to answer questions if anyone has thoughts or musings or things they've been wondering about so far in the book club. And then I'm also going to be happy to have you all share your experience so far. And I'll happily read off things that you write. So this is just a really big, lovely, splendid, cozy hangout time. So I hope that's okay with everybody. Hey, Arif. Hey, Zobaida. It's good to see you. Linda. So good to see you. Okay. Awesome. So happy that Linda's here. We've got Mia. Who else is here? I see there are 32 people so far, which is exciting. Let me know in the chat where you're joining from. And if you're joining the book club, let me know what you've been reading. That would be fantastic. I guess we'll get started. I'm not sure how long to wait for people to join, but that's okay. This will also be available later as well. So like I said, oh, hey, Lucas. Hi from Brazil. Laura or Iora. Hello from, we'll find out. Hey, Rangon's Cuban. Good to see you. Thank you for the thank you for the very, very kind comment there. Kalingua, very nice to see you here. I always appreciate your comments. So thank you. We've got people joining from Russia, from Turkey. Coucou, Brigitte, or Brigitte. Just nice to be here with you as well. So I'll start as everybody's joining and coming in. Greetings from Brazil. Very nice to see you, Breno. So yeah, for me, I've been really enjoying this round of the book club. Hey, Martha from Germany. We've got Jessica from Argentina. This is so much fun. Okay, so I have to say, I've been really enjoying the book club so far. I have certainly been slow with my book, but to be honest, that was expected, right? Because I'm probably an intermediate learner of Mandarin Chinese, maybe somewhere middle intermediate by now, and I'm reading essentially a collection of short novels, it's pretty cool. I love it. It's got these gorgeous illustrations inside of it. So this is part one. And then I'm really excited because the story I'm reading right now has this awesome illustration. But this book is very challenging for me. So I've been going very, very slowly, but I've been really enjoying it and I've learned a ton of stuff. Let me know in the chat, how has it been for you in terms of pace, right? Or rhythm? How much have you read of your book so far? Have you taken the slow approach? Have you been frustrated with how slow it's going, or have you been happy with it? Let me know. This live stream is mostly about all of you, to be honest. I want to hear your experiences, answer your questions. Let's see. Who else do we have here? We have Sabrina from Vienna. We have Sibyl from Germany, Richard from Germany. Rangos is asking about what's the name of the short story you're on. Let's see here. Just started to read The Monkey King in Chinese. Richard, I actually have one of those books. Let me grab it. So I have this one. The Rise of the Monkey King. This is a graded reader version of that story, but I haven't read it yet. Bruno is reading Shadow of the Wind and was one of the best books they've ever read. I am delighted to hear that. So Richard says that he has started very slow and struggled a lot, but then he's learned a lot of vocab in advance, and then he reads it smoothly, and now I'm in love with reading. That is so good to hear. Honestly, that's the thing, right? For me, I'm okay with going slowly, right? So I've actually read the first story of this book about 5 times. So let's see. Wunan Yue, that was the first story. So basically a difficult month for the mother. And I read it like 5 times. So for me, the first time I read like the page 1, it was incredibly slow. It was unbelievably slow, right? But I was learning so many words. I was taking my time to kind of figure things out. So for me, the first time through was really just about trying to see if I can understand the meaning. The second time I read each page, I was really taking more of an approach as if I'm a translator. So I was really trying to think very deeply about, do I really understand this sentence, right? And really thinking a bit more critically about the grammar, about the sentence structure, because for me, that's the hardest part of reading this in Chinese. The sentences are quite complex, and it's very literary, it's very flowery, beautiful language. So it's just challenging to simply parse the sentences and make sure I actually understand what's being said. And then the third time reading it was more fluid, it was faster, and it was more about trying to get the emotion, right? Because this book is full of quite melancholic, somewhat sad stories, but there's of course a lot of really great value in that. And so the third time through for me is a lot more about, okay, now I know what's being said. I think I want to try to understand the emotion behind this story. I want to try to understand the hidden meaning, perhaps, or what is the author actually trying to tell me? What's the purpose of writing this story? So I really like that Richard says that despite struggling in the beginning, by taking time learning the vocab in advance, all of a sudden now he's in love with the process. So that's really great. Linda says, I've been on holidays doing a lot of things and thus wasn't able to read much. That's why I'm currently behind, but I plan on catching up. Well, I have no doubt Linda will catch up. In fact, Linda, you told me that you have been reading a lot of books since the first book club started. So that's really cool. Zobaida says they are reading El Principito. So that's The Little Prince in Spanish. And you're stuck on chapter 2. So as we go through this live stream, maybe you can elaborate in the chat, Zobaida, and let us know what are you stuck on, right? And then we can try to help. I'll be happy to answer the best I can. Sibyl says, I'm really happy and enjoy reading my book, which is an Italian book called Mio fratello rincorre I dinosauri. Interesting. I'm slowly with the book, and if I feel to, I'm reading a page twice. Okay, so we have a few different people doing this approach of reading multiple times. The nice thing for me is that it becomes a little bit more like you get to have that sort of comprehensible input experience a little bit, right? Even though, of course, when you open the first page, depending on your level, your comprehension might be quite low, right? Potentially. But when you read it 2 or 3 or 4 times, if you're not in a hurry, eventually you can read through that page quite fluidly, and you're really internalizing a lot of stuff there. So you get the experience of reading a very high level text at a pretty natural pace, potentially. Just takes time to process it, right? So I'm really happy to hear you're happy, Sibyl. Bruno says reading is the best way to learn new words in context, in my experience. I agree. I have what I've been finding from this book is that I'm seeing a lot of like Chinese characters that I know. I've seen them before, but I've never seen them in the context that they're in here, right? So there are some Chinese characters that normally I see as a pair, but I've seen them a few times by themselves or different things. So I'm finding that I am experiencing things I've never seen in the textbook world or the graded readers, right? And that's the nice thing about reading literature, I think. One of the nice things about pushing yourself, whether it's reading or whether it's like watching movies or listening to podcasts, it really pushes you and it shows you how close am I to the real world, right? Because I think sometimes if you are always reading graded readers, which I do love, right? So I love graded readers, not bashing them at all. But if you read only graded readers, and if you only read stuff from your textbook, and if you only listen to podcasts that are meant for learners, for me, sometimes I don't know how close I am to native content, right? And so sometimes you can start to feel quite comfortable, like, oh wow, I'm fluently reading this level 2 graded reader. I'm fluently understanding this learner podcast. But then it can be a shock when you experience how challenging things are in the real world or native content. So I like doing this from time to time, even if this is very challenging for me, and even if I probably will do some more graded readers after this. But the point is that now I know, right? Now I know, okay, how close am I to understanding authentic native content? And that's really a nice thing. Let's see. So Richard says, I can also recommend the HSK storybooks, short, cute stories, easy to read. I will keep that in mind. It's a good tip. Kalingua says, I have read 2 chapters of a difficult Spanish book, Cien años de soledad. That sounds interesting. 100 years of sunshine, I guess, right? Yeah. And I bounce from following it along well to not having the slightest clue what is going on. It takes so long. Love it, though. Yeah, and you see, here's the thing, honestly. And I would love to get everybody's input in the chat on what you think about this idea. I always say that when it comes to reading literature, right, when it comes to reading the really hard stuff, your curiosity is really such a powerful tool, right? At the end of the day, if you really want to know what's going on, right? If you're truly interested in the contents of this story, it's amazing how far that will take you. And like I said before, yeah, sometimes it's really slow, right? Sometimes it takes quite a while to get through. But in my experience, those moments, like Carlingua said, the moments when you're understanding no problem, right? Even if it's one sentence, that is so amazing. Like it's the best feeling in the world. For me with this book, every time, even if I read like 5 characters back to back with no problem, or maybe even a whole row of characters with no problem, I feel like I'm on top of the world. I feel like my life is complete. Like it's such a good feeling. And then, yeah, when you hit those parts where it's so slow, I just feel like if your curiosity is strong enough, if you feed it, if you allow it to grow, that can get you through. So that's my thought, but I would love to hear what you guys think in the comments. I just think curiosity, one of the most powerful tools in language learning with authentic native level content. Jessica says, Calingua, that's a difficult book, even in Spanish. You need to pay a lot of attention. Hey, Alemán Explicado says, hello from Mexico. Good to see you. So Jessica says, I'm currently reading Scarlet, but it's a bit difficult because it has mechanical terms that I don't understand. That's a really good point. So that's a common thing, right? So in this book, the first story contains a lot of medical vocabulary. There's a whole scene where there is a Chinese medicine doctor, and so there's a few things, some medical terms, but also some ingredients or words like prescription. And then there was also quite a lot of spiritual language. So things about praying, things about, sacrificing a pig, for a wedding ceremony, things like that. And there's also words in here like a mine shaft, like the father at 16 years old works at a mine shaft, or, so those are very technical words, right? And I think that is common. There's a book I was reading a long time ago on my YouTube channel called El Tiempo Entre Costuras by Maria Dueñas. And that book contains a ton of vocabulary about textiles, right? Because she is a seamstress. So a bunch of words about textiles and sewing and clothing. There's a bunch of vocabulary about about war and about political things. So I think that a lot of times when you read literature, you're likely to come across some technical vocabulary or very uncommon vocabulary that is particular to the story. So it's an interesting question. Should you commit to learning that vocabulary? Should you look it up and then maybe ignore it? Or should you just ignore it? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. My approach has been that I do look it up, but I don't necessarily try to learn it, right? So, for example, if I did not look up the word for mine shaft, I would have no clue that this guy was 16 years old working in the mines, right, as a miner. And he wasn't even old enough to officially work in the mines, so he had to be like an assistant. So if I completely ignored that word, I would have missed a pretty important piece of the story, because the whole point is that it illustrates that his life was very challenging. If he was 16 years old working at McDonald's, it would completely change the vibe of the story, right? So that's been my approach. I do look up those words, especially if it feels important to the context. And I do find that sometimes those uncommon vocabulary words, that's often what they do, right? So if you're reading a book and the guy's a mechanic and there's I don't know, sometimes those mechanical words might be context sort of anchors, if you will. So yeah, that's my approach. I do look those things up unless they really feel not important, right? Like for example, okay, the part where there's a doctor and we're talking about ingredients. If I'm pretty sure that there's a bunch of words that are just medical ingredients, maybe I'll skip them, right? I still looked it up because I was too curious, but maybe I'll skip them because I don't think they're going to necessarily change my understanding of the story. But yeah, I do look things up, but if it turns out to be a really technical word, I just ignore it afterwards. And if it comes up again, I'll remember it or I'll just look it up again. So, really, I'm really loving reading the chat. It's really, you guys are bringing up excellent points. Let's see what else is going on in the chat. Oh, here we go. So Michelle Wilson says, though it's challenging, I'm really enjoying reading Twilight in Korean. Wow. Thank you for doing this book club, Multilingual Book Club. That's really cool. I'm proud of you, Michelle, for trying something like Twilight. I'm also curious to know if stories like Twilight, like things like that, if the translations into languages with very different cultures, like I'm curious to know, like how the translations are sometimes adapted. You know, if there's already a pre-existing notion of certain things, but they're very different. I don't know. That was a tangent. Let's see. So Rangon says, yeah, whenever you take that leap, there's a period of shock where you either run away or acclimatize. I mean, that's a good point. There is a bit of shock, but here, and I think that it's good to go through that shock before you're like arriving in a country, right? So, because when I went to Japan to study, there were a lot of students who went together, and a lot of people where that shock that happened like when they were in Japan trying to function. And it was very stressful for a lot of those people and very disappointing, right? Like they felt really disappointed because they expected to do better, right? And they expected it to be easier. So that's why I like doing stuff like this at my current level, right? Because yeah, it's a bit of a shock. It's insanely difficult, but I'm not going to be shocked after that. Like next time I try to read one of these things, I don't know, maybe there's also a bit of a shock factor. But the point is, by challenging yourself to take on that kind of stuff, whether it's this or whether it's transcribing a podcast or whether it's watching a TV drama, whatever it is, by doing these things that are really challenging, we learn a lot and we get that shock period out of the way, so that when you go and find yourself in a real life scenario, whatever it might be, I think it helps you prepare for that. Let's see. I hope everyone's enjoying this. By the way, side note, I'm a little sad because I was so excited to use my camera for this live stream and finally have epic video quality, but I was missing a cable. I already have like 4 cables to make this happen, and like a special capture card thing and like a whole shebang. But it turns out there's one more cable I need. So, but hopefully the nice audio is an improvement. Okay, back to the chat. So, so Kalingwa says, learning this the hard way, read the same things many times, hope it gets easier. So 100 years of solitude. Oh, you know, that's funny. I was wondering if it was solitude. That's really funny. That's a bit embarrassing. Let's see. Okay, what else we have in the chat? Rangon says, I'd recommend reading the Chinese translated version of the Hans Andersen stories. Only select stories, though. I made the mistake of reading everything. Some stories were really boring. And yeah, I think that's a good point too. Like, as I said, you want to be curious about what you're reading. And so reading something that is just boring, I mean, if you have the willpower to push through it, like that's cool. But yeah, sometimes afterwards you feel like maybe that wasn't worth it. At least if you love the story, right? If you are dying to read it, no matter what, at least if you finish it, if you get through it, at least you did it. You read the story. So let's see. What else do we have? So Linda says, in Percy Jackson, there are a lot of terms from Greek mythology. Luckily, because the word origin is Greek, the German and the Portuguese terms are quite similar. Right, because I think Linda is reading in Portuguese. Yeah, that's a good point. We have Lolly Lolly checking in from France. Bonjour. Okay, so Michelle says, I think while it might not be necessary to learn every word, it's always good to know the unusual words you come across in the story you're reading so that it can help enhance your understanding. Yeah, exactly. Like, again, reading a book like El tiempo entre costuras, the time between seams, if you just completely ignore all of the seamstress and textiles and like all that stuff, again, you probably miss some quite important context. And I also think that as you go through the book and you're picking up these technical terms, I think you get a better sense for what you might be able to ignore, right? Like, so once you know a few of these terms, you might see another one, and then you kind of start to get a sense of like, oh, that's probably just another one of these terms, and you can make a decision whether it's worth slowing yourself down to look it up. So Sibyl says, since the book is not too difficult that I'm reading, I don't look up words now. But later I think I will read it again, looking up some words. Yeah, by the way, that's another very good approach. So some people will choose to read either the whole book, or maybe they read just one page or one chapter without looking anything up, and then go back and read it a second time, and then look things up. And I think that's actually a really good strategy as well. The nice thing about that is it really tests your ability to see how much can I actually understand if I just push through this. The second thing is sometimes it surprises you. There is a book that I read. I'll grab it. Where is it? So this book, La Délicatesse by David Fuenquinos. This is the first book I ever read in French without needing a dictionary and just reading all the way through. But the funny thing is, the very beginning of the book, I was actually using a dictionary. I couldn't help myself, right? I was looking up words, but I found myself in a situation where it just didn't make sense. Like I was on a train or something. Like I didn't have a dictionary with me, or my phone was dead. I don't remember, but I know that I was in a position where it didn't make sense. So I just read it. And that's when I realized, oh my God, I don't need to look things up. I can just read this. And then I just read the whole rest of the book. And so sometimes challenging yourself to just kind of push forward a little bit, it could also lead to you discovering that you actually understand more than you think. And yeah, you can always come back and read it a second time or a third time. By the way, I hope you I love going and pulling off books from my shelf. So hope you don't mind me doing that. Let's see. Michelle says, so far the translation in Twilight seems very poetic and gives a somewhat new and sometimes elevated meaning to the story. That's interesting. Oh, Rachel, let's see. Rachel says, I've been reading Ye Sheng Tao essays, and I look up every word I don't know because I'm interested in seeing how he uses Mandarin creatively. Once again, wonderful, right? Like, I love that. If your approach is not just like, oh God, looking up words. If you're like, no, I'm looking up these words because again, curiosity, right? Like I just want to know, not just what does it mean. As Rachel says, like I want to see how he's using Mandarin creatively, right? This book that I'm reading, 这些人那些事, a lot of people have told me, oh, it's so beautifully written, right? It's so emotional and powerful, and it's really flowery. So to me, I have no idea what that means in Mandarin, right? I've never read a book like that, and I've never listened to that type of language. So similar thing. I'm like, wow, I want to know what that looks like in Mandarin. I want to experience that flowery, emotional, poetic, beautiful language, right? So, Rasmus, so good to see you in the chat. Hello there. Richard says, I'm honestly really appreciating your channel. It's very inspiring, and I've learned a lot of usual methods. Thank you. Really, it makes me happy. Really appreciate the feedback. All right, so Terrace says, reading HP, I guess that's Harry Potter, in English for me was such a great experience because I was understanding almost every single word, but it was my first book in English. Oh God, the chat moved. Oh no, I lost your... Oh, here we go. And it surprised me understanding so much. I mean, come on, Harry Potter, right? In a different language. By the way, if anyone is learning French and you haven't tried reading some Harry Potter, you may be delighted to find out that the word for magic wand is baguette magique. I think that is the best thing ever. So lots of fun things to discover for Harry Potter fans in French. But come on, Harry Potter, right? Like, if you don't like Harry Potter, that's fine. But like the magical world of Harry Potter, like imagine being immersed in that world in your target language, right? I mean, imagine how that feels like in Italian. I can't even imagine. Like it makes me just like so excited, even just imagining being immersed in such a magical, complex story world in any one of my languages. I mean, that must be fantastic, right? That's the kind of thing that makes me excited about doing this stuff. So good for you, Terrace, for reading Harry Potter in English. Ewan, good to see you. Always love your comments. Hi, Robin. It's slow progress getting through Crime and Punishment, but it has been really helpful, and I feel myself reading faster and faster. I might not finish the whole thing within 1 month, though. Hey, totally fine. I can guarantee I will not finish this, this book in 1 month. We'll do a lot more of these book clubs. So, by the way, I would love to know if you guys don't mind telling me, or if you folks don't mind telling me. I'm trying to adjust my language. I'd love to know if you like the 1 month timeline. Do you like having a timeline at all? And you know, is 1 month a good amount, or would you potentially like to see a 2 month book club? Right? I chose 1 month because it felt like a really nice, solid, you know, simple amount of time. And the idea was that even if you don't finish your book, that's okay. You could just continue it in the next one, right? Or just continue it on your own afterwards, right? But I'm certainly open to doing these in different ways. Let's see. Tara says, I guess it was easy for me in my first try because I already know the history. I watched the movie and I read the book in my language 1 million times. Yeah, I'd like to know how many people are reading a book that you have already read in your native language. That's a very common strategy, you know, to read a book that you already love and adore, a book that you know inside and out. On one hand, it makes it a bit easier, which is good in that it really can help you, right? Certainly if you're trying to read in a more extensive approach where you're trying to not skip stuff, you're trying to guess a lot of things, and you're just trying to cover lots of ground, knowing the story already is going to help a ton. On the other hand, it's sometimes really nice, the challenge of seeing a story for the first time, right, in the target language. That's also a beautiful challenge. So I think both are great things to do. Excuse me. And I encourage everyone to try both things. Ihan Yu says, reading Stirb für ihn on my Kindle and listening to the audiobook at the same time. The audio helps a lot with reading pace. I'm hoping to finish it today and then continue to read something else. Wow. First of all, congratulations. If you're going to finish your book by the halfway mark of the book club, that's amazing. So congratulations. And yeah, that's also a nice approach, having the audiobook. I love reading with having the audiobook as well when possible. So that's really, really cool. Tamara sends a heart, and I'm sending a heart right back. Jesus says that I learn English with your videos. That's really cool. I often wonder that. Wow. So we have Marcus Aurelius in the chat. I learn English with you. It will be my second language. I don't know why I understand you better than another. I get told that a lot, that people understand me more easily than the average native speaker. I think I've developed this hybridized accent and way of speaking that seems to be more clear for learners of English, which is interesting. 12,03 says, name all the languages you know. I've studied a decent amount. My current languages that I actively claim to study and speak to some level of fluency are after English, French, Japanese, Mandarin now. Hey, I think I can say Mandarin finally. I'm not saying I'm super fluent, but I think I can say that I can speak in Mandarin, right? German, Swedish, Portuguese, Spanish, Italian. I think that's all of them. But I have also learned Dutch in the past. I've learned a few others. And they all need work, that's for sure. So Bridget says, I'm really glad about that picture of hitting a rock, that one day every hit will count when the rock finally breaks. Therefore, I tell myself to relax when I get scared. Yeah, that's one of my favorite analogies. So Bridget is referring to the analogy I've shared a few times of the stone cutter, where basically, the stone cutter is hitting the stone over and over and over again. Well, actually, probably has a hammer and chiseling. And the point is that with every hit, the stone doesn't really change much, right? But then finally, it might be 100, 1,000 strikes later, the stone suddenly splits in two. And the idea is that it's not just the final, blow that broke the stone. It's every single one of those blows. And so even if you're struggling, even if you are, you're looking up words, you're struggling through one page at a time, and it seems like you're getting nowhere. The fact is that you'll get there eventually, and it's every single one of these steps that you take that will get you there in the end. So hope that was an okay summary of the analogy. Okay, Rangon says, for me, I love novelty way too much. I never go back and pick up a different book and just hope that words repeat again. Yeah, I have to say, I hear this a lot, so you're not alone. I very often consume content multiple times, right? So whether it's a book, like, oh my God, I have so many French books, I can't wait to read again. I can't wait. but I do the same thing with TV dramas. So if I find a TV drama that I absolutely love and adore, I will happily go back and watch it again, especially to learn the language that is used, right? So maybe the first time, maybe I watch it for enjoyment and pleasure. Usually I'm still looking things up. I'm still pausing it and taking a look at the target language subtitles. But let's say the first time I'm mostly enjoying it, I'm so happy to go back and watch it a second or a third time to really break it down, really digest all the language. There are some movies in French that I watched 3, 4, 5, 6 times. But the cool thing is that now when I watch it back, I can understand every word. And that is an amazing experience. However, a lot of people do tell me that they just don't like doing that. They just don't like reading or watching something twice. And that's fair. Like everyone is different. I definitely, I would never tell someone like you're wrong. Like, hey, if you just don't like doing it, I always encourage trying it, and I always encourage just like thinking about the benefits, right? Like thinking about why you're doing it. However, like I said, a lot of people do just not like it. So, I'm curious to know whether other people in the chat have had that experience. If anyone has eventually come to like it, right? I just love it. Like for example, there's a wonderful French movie, Intouchable, that I'm sure many of you have seen. If I watch that movie back, I understand every word, right? Every reference, all the jokes. There's like some really funny stuff. Like, for example, Berlioz, there's a joke about Berlioz, where you have a composer, but also a particular like neighborhood, and there's a really funny moment where the two are confused, and like I understand everything in that movie because I watched it a whole bunch of times, and that is magical. Like that, and it's the feeling of watching or reading something and just being able to go through it and feel like you are the master of that content. That's special. And I'm not good enough in any of my languages to get that experience on the first time through something. Maybe French when I was at my best. Now my French has gotten a bit rusty. But even in French, I think, yeah, especially things like understanding those little cultural references that I would not know unless I lived in Paris or unless I really knew Paris well. Yeah, so maybe that helps. I hope that sharing my passion for that, maybe that helps some people give it a try. But ultimately, if you don't like it, you shouldn't do it, right? So let's see. I'm having so much fun. I hope you guys are having a good time as well. Let's see. Mia says 1 month is okay. Good to know. But however, Sadel says 1 month seems too short. I've done maybe 2 chapters so far. And then UN also had said 1 month is a good amount of time. So yeah, it seems like mixed feelings. Seems like it seems like the majority like it, but it seems like something is too short. So yeah, I'll definitely continue taking feedback. Maybe I'll do a survey after the book club is over. But again, the nice thing is that even if you don't finish it in the month, you can just keep reading that book in the next round of the book club, right? So, okay, I think I missed a few up top here. Let me see. Hey, Aggie, good to see you. No worries about being late. I love how, hey, if you're late to the live stream because you were having coffee and reading, totally cool. You get a pass. Kalingua asks, how many books in French did you read to get to the point where you could read without looking things up? Okay, so in French, my story is like let me grab some. All right, let's see. So these are all French books. These are all French novels. What I did in French, I don't know that I recommend this for everybody, but this is what I did. It was one of my first languages that I was learning as a foreign language. I basically read a whole bunch of books, like the first chapter. So I read The Little Prince, then I read L'Étranger, which was a very steep climb. I read L'Étranger with Link. So I did that, and it was a long process, but that's how I got through it. After that, though, I started picking up books left and right. I picked up this book, La grammaire est une chanson douce. That one I did read all the way through. But then I picked up Le Pianiste, and it was very, very hard. And I read like the first 2 chapters, 3 chapters. It was just so hard. So then I was like, maybe this one is easier. Le Grand Moule, this is now one of my favorite books. I read like 3 or 4 chapters of this. Then I was like, you know what? Maybe Le Vieux qui lisait des romans d'amour. Maybe that is easier. So basically what happened is I read the first like 2 or 3 chapters of a bunch of like 10 books, let's say. But the cool thing is, every time I did that, I was learning a ton of words. I was getting a ton of practice, right? So slowly but surely, then I picked up this book, like for example, Mes Amis, Mes Amours, which I've mentioned a few times in my videos. And I read like maybe 40% of the book. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. But then it was just too hard. So basically I did that for a while. I read pieces of quite a lot of books. And again, what happened is I learned thousands and thousands of words. I got lots of practice. So yeah, I read quite a lot. And then that's when finally I picked up La Délicatesse, and magic happened. And then the pinnacle of the doorbell's ringing. I don't know what to do. That might be important, but hang on one second. I don't know what's going on. Is that the first floor or second floor? Okay, are you able to leave it? Sorry? Are you sure it's first floor? Oh, okay. Are you able to leave it down there? I'm on an important meeting. Thank you so much. Okay. Okay. Best live stream ever. I am very... Okay. It seems like a good friend of mine from Japan has sent me a parcel, and sorry about that. Okay. What was I saying? Yeah, okay. The pinnacle of my French reading, and to be honest, the pinnacle of reading in my whole life was this book, Elle et Lui, by MacPherson. This is the first book and the only book in my whole life I have read all the way through in a single reading session. I know loads of people do that. I'm the slowest reader on the planet. So unfortunately, that's not been a part of my life. But this book I read in a single sitting. So I stayed up till like 3 or 4 in the morning, which, by the way, I never do that. I go to sleep super early, but that was the most magical thing. I mean, it was just unbelievable. So sorry, that was a long story, but I hope you guys enjoyed that. Let's see. Alemán Explicado says, is anyone else reading in Norwegian? God, I love Norwegian. So someone says here, one of the methods I use is reading one page, then writing down your own translation, then trying to translate it back into the original and comparing the results. Do it several times. Thanks for sharing. Canada Mills says, trying to find a short-ish novel in European Portuguese by a Portuguese author around a B1 level. I'm more of an intensive reader. I have a suggestion for you. Let's see. So this is one that I have. It's very, very short. And this is A Casa de Papel. And I bought this. So this is by Carlos Maria Dominguez. Now, to be honest, actually, I don't know. So this author is from Argentina. However, so maybe it's not a good thing. I bought this in Portugal when I was living in Lisbon. It's in Portuguese. It's in European Portuguese, but not by a European Portuguese author. So sorry, that was not as helpful as I thought. But maybe the chat will have more useful suggestions. That's embarrassing. But I like this book. Has anyone else read this? So yeah, and by the way, this was long before the Spanish series La Casa de Papel. Okay, on Netflix. All right, so Canada Mill says, I find it much more satisfying to understand most of the words, so I can get really immersed in a novel. Don't mind looking up frequently used new words and making notes for future references. Yeah, I hear you on that. Okay, Michael, Mikhail, I really, I'm sorry. It's hard to know with some okay. All right, so I'm going to go with Mikhail for now. My book has some words that I had trouble finding definitions for. Interesting. Some of them are alternate spellings, and I can find them by switching some letters, but sometimes I just end up relying on context. That is interesting. I'd love to know some examples of what kind of stuff you're finding. Let's see. Rangons says, speaking of Harry Potter, I can say the first couple Harry Potter books are far easier than Joshira and Nashishir. That's interesting. Okay, so apparently the book I am reading is more difficult than Harry Potter. Good to know. Good to know. I have to say, I can't imagine reading Harry Potter in Chinese. That just seems so wild, but that would be pretty cool. Okay. Okay, now I'm caught up to the 1 month things. Okay, Bridget says, good idea, Harry Potter. By the way, chopsticks in French is also baguette. Like, okay, we know the French love baguettes, but this is getting a little crazy. But I love it. By the way, now I have this image of actual baguettes being used as chopsticks, and that is also pretty fun. Rasmus says, I'm going to admit that I haven't participated in this 1 month challenge, but as I study at uni, I read books. The most challenging one for the autumn semester is physics. Oh, wow, in Estonian. Very interesting. My dear friend Richard Simcott, as many of you may know, has been doing an Estonian challenge. Sibyl says she likes timeline, and it'd be more, I think it would be a more difficult book. It would be better 2 months, but for now, enjoying the monthly timeline. Yeah, that's a good point. Sadel says, I'm reading a new book in Irish. Very cool. I think that you're the first Irish reader I've seen so far. That is a topic I read tons about. I'm a member. Oh, it's a memoir of one guy's walk on El Camino. I have also got the audio, but it's in a different dialect. That's interesting. Yeah, that's a good idea. Reading a book about a topic that you are very familiar with is a good idea. Let's see. I'm scrolling through the chat here. Let's see. Curly asks, Curly3373, what about Vietnamese? Did you drop it at the moment? Yeah, so I'm not currently doing Vietnamese at the moment. You should be a bestseller. Let's see. Just looking at the chat here. Hope you're having a good time. I'm having a good time. This is fun. I just wish I could have my nice camera quality video. Let's see. So 12,03. Even when I have read a story for about 20 times and understand everything, I still read it again and again, so I don't have to translate them in my mind while using them. Jesus asks, how long does it take you to learn a language? Well, That's an interesting question. In the past, I have learned some languages to some level of fluency. So I mean, like very basic, plenty of mistakes, not perfect at all, but I've done that quite quickly in the space of a few months in the past, depending on the language. But those were situations where I was learning like all day, every day, like really intensively. And I had already learned several languages. Mandarin Chinese, I decided I'm going to learn this. In the beginning, it was like 30 minutes per day because I was trying to learn it in the same way that a lot of people would, right? Busy life, lots of other responsibilities. And I've not been learning Mandarin it's now really closer to 2.5 years. I think. So, it really depends on what language you're learning, but I think most of all, it depends on the circumstances. So yeah, I can learn a language pretty quick if I really dedicate all my time to it. But I think that's not how most people are able to study languages. So that's why my focus these days tends to be trying to learn languages in a similar set of circumstances to lots of people so I can better understand the things that people go through. So Catherine says, hi, I'm from the US. I'm not following the book club specifically, but I'm definitely using the videos as motivation to keep working through a Spanish course that is centered around a story. Sid asks, how did you memorize the characters? Please tell. I've been engaging with Chinese characters for a very, very long time because I learned Japanese and I adored kanji in Japanese. So I was a huge fan of characters in Japanese, and then of course now Mandarin. I'll give you a short answer since we got lots of comments to get through. I learn characters in the context of vocabulary. So I actually don't personally find it is the most effective thing learning characters individually. I know lots of people do that. In my opinion, the thing is that the magic of learning Chinese characters happens when you reach a certain point where you're starting to see the same characters come up over and over again in different words. And so you reach a certain point where in the beginning, it's quite difficult to learn characters. This is the difficulty curve because you can't associate them with anything, right? But you get to a certain point where every new word you see has like one character that you've already seen before, or it has a radical you've seen before, or you recognize the radical, and then therefore you realize, oh, this pronunciation is kind of linked to this particular radical. And so I find tremendous value in learning Chinese characters through context of vocabulary. So, if I learn 这些人, I'm more focused on understanding that 这些, like these things, versus the specific meaning of 写. This is not a good example, but like in Japanese, the word fukuzatsu means complicated. I'm more focused on understanding fukuzatsu means complicated and understanding fuku here and zatsu, sorry. That's more important to me than understanding what does fuku mean and what are all the different things how it can be pronounced. That doesn't end up being that useful in real everyday language that you encounter. So that's my personal strategy. I learn characters through vocabulary. 12,03 says, say something in Italian. Well, è interessante perché questa settimana io ho ricominciato con l'italiano. È un segreto per adesso perché io vorrei fare un video in italiano di questo tema, non so come dire. Quindi sì, spero che ti piace questa piccola parte in italiano. Okay. Linda says that she thinks a month is manageable, even if there are directions like being on holidays, but ask this question again in 2 weeks. Hey, Brian's here. Good to see you, Brian. Hello. When reading, I imagine I'm trying to explain to somebody what the story is about. It helps it to sink in. That's a really good point. Maybe some of you can think about that. Would you be able to explain the story? And by the way, if you have a roommate, friend, family, a partner, a husband, wife, a spouse, someone that you can talk to about what you're doing, someone that will listen to you patiently, it's a good exercise, right? As you read, try to explain the story to somebody. Or what you can also do is have your friend, roommate, partner, have them read the book in their native language or a language you have in common. You read the book in your target language. They will read way faster than you, which you might argue about, but that's okay. But then you can discuss it, right? And then that way, if you get stuck, you can bring them in and ask them, hey, what does it mean? And then you get to kind of do it together. But I think great tip from Brian. Sid says, not movies, but anime. I'm a starter. I understood 50%, watching it 11 times. Aggie says, let's see. Oh no, I lost the chat. Aggie's reading it in French, a French novel intensively, and another from the same series extensively. And despite knowing the storylines in English already, I can't get through either one in a month, and that's okay. I totally agree, that is okay. Julio asks, what do you think about bilingual books in language learning? I think bilingual books can be nice. It depends on how they're done. The nice thing about bilingual books, in my experience, is that usually they make an effort to make the translation a bit more literal. So it's potentially more helpful for actually learning a language. If you read, like, let's say, Elle et lui, French, and then you read the English translation, the thing is that translation is useful in its own way, because you get to see how an expert translator, hopefully, how they chose to translate things. But the point is that it's going to be a literary translation. And so sometimes things will have changed. They will change the way sentences are structured to be more natural in English, for example. However, sometimes if your specific goal is to understand the French or whatever language you're learning, sometimes there is a gap. And so a lot of times bilingual books, they have been translated in a specific way that is supposed to be more helpful for actually understanding the original. That's been my experience. So I think they can be quite useful in that regard. Let's see. Okay. Tara asks, did you find that LinkQ helped you advance in your reading skills? It was helpful. Like, for example, I think if I did not use Link for l'étranger in French, I would not have been able to finish it, right? Because at that point, the only book I read was Little Prince. So moving on to The Stranger, L'étranger by Albert Camus, after that, like, that was incredibly challenging. However, yeah, it was useful. I don't know that it was it was useful, but then it was also really useful when I just kind of jumped into the books. So I did get value from Link. I haven't used it for quite a long time now. I got frustrated with the hugely varying, content quality and stuff like that. So yeah, it is useful. Like, it helped me get through a text that I probably would not have been able to get through without it. So yeah, it can be a really useful tool, I think. Let's see. Margarita Dolce Vita says, ciao, Robin. Ciao. Just want to thank you for all your work. Your videos motivated me to get back to language learning after getting COVID 1 month ago. Aw, I'm really happy to hear that, and I hope you're feeling better after going through that. Sid says, is reading more powerful than listening? They're two different. I see. They're really different. Like they're different in so many ways, right? Like listening. Like the thing is, if you only read, right? If you only read, I think you will have trouble understanding people speak, right? Just because there's so much that goes into speaking. Right, like their accent and mumbling and jumbling words and the way that words blend together, things like that. Reading is really powerful because, in my opinion, you have the opportunity to understand every single word. When you listen, a lot of times you just can't hear it. Right? Like I've tried listening to a podcast called Bear Talk in Chinese, and there are some parts where I'm like, I can't hear the sounds properly because they're blending together. With reading, every word is on the page. You have it. You have the opportunity to understand it and grasp it. They're just so different. They both have so many benefits. So I couldn't say one or the other, to be honest. Glot says ding dong. Ding dong. Let's see. Michelle says, I used to dislike watching and reading things twice, but I've rewatched Lupin in French and Vincenzo in Korean twice. And the light bulb of understanding is so much brighter with every rewatch. I'll definitely continue. That's a really good to hear that. That's a nice experience to read. Glot says, I've so far read a couple books by Camus in French. Oh, Ryan's here. Okay, Ryan is in the chat. By the way, first of all, Ryan is an absolutely amazing person, fantastic, wonderful friend of mine, and also is has been an incredibly influential and pivotal, instrumental person on the development of Journaly. So I try to mention that as much as I can, but in case anyone's not aware, Ryan is the man, and he has been a fantastic contributor to Journaly, amongst just a lot of good conversations with me. So, sorry, Ryan says, Lauren wants to know what the plant in the background is. Also, she says your French is really good. Aw, okay. The plant is a monstera, and I'll grab it for you. I'm quite proud of my plant. It's quite large, and it's getting a little bit too feisty. So I don't know. Might have to figure something out. Okay, we'll probably have to stop the live stream soon because I realized we are 10 minutes past 1 hour, but I'm having so much fun. Let's see. Xin Chao. Hey. I've been reading Le Petit Prince with my French tutor, and it's getting easier. Thanks for sharing the French books you've read. It is my pleasure. Honestly, like I love pulling out all my books. I love it. Let's see. Calingua says, do you notice any cultural differences in the style or content of books you read in different languages? Yeah, definitely. There are very different styles of telling stories. Also simple things like certain languages like Japanese or French, like certain languages will heavily favor telling past tense events in the present tense, if that makes sense. Like there's really interesting different styles of writing, but also there are things like, certain cultures favor melancholic stories and things don't always end in a happy way, whereas in other cultures, like in American culture, most Hollywood movies end in a really happy way. So like Japanese horror stories are fascinating in that they focus a lot more on really dark, twisted things versus like really bloody, gory things. Whereas I find like a lot of American horror movies, at least the ones I've seen, at least more modern ones, there's often a lot more emphasis on just lots of blood and really disgusting things. So I find the Japanese horror stories like really, like 2 days later, I'm still like, ugh, God. So I'm not sure if that answers if that answers the question. Let's see. I'm gonna scroll through. I'm actually, you know what? I've almost kept up with the chat. Aw. I'm happy. Normally I fail completely and I lose. I'm like way behind. You know what? Actually, I'm more behind than I thought. As I'm scrolling through, I'm like, oh, actually, okay. I don't know. I'm not sure what to do at this point in the live stream. We're 1 hour and 12 minutes, so probably need to wrap it up. But there are more questions. Reading method cannot be applied to Nihongo or Chinese as it has many characters. Well, I'm reading in Chinese and I've read a bunch of books in Japanese. Luis says, love the new haircut. Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm still not sure about it. I miss my hair. But I really like my morning routine being so much faster. So that's interesting. Okay, I'm gonna scroll through and just see if anything is okay. Rangon says the hard part about Harry Potter in Chinese is the names. Yeah, names can be challenging, I think. Lezek is here. So good to see you, Lezek. Who says, time flies. I remember when you first started learning it. I can't believe it's already been 2 years. Yeah, I can't believe it either. Let's see. Scrolling through. I might not get to everything here, but just in case there's anything. Thank you so much for the wonderful feedback, Bear Paws. I don't know what to do. I want to answer every question and say hi to everybody. Well, I think I'll probably have to have to close the live stream. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Hey, Billy. Billy says, I'm reading a self-help book in French that was translated from English. Surrounding yourself with extraordinary people. I'm learning French at the same time as helping myself improve my life. Yeah, I think that's an amazing scenario, right? Like if you can read a book that genuinely improves your life, that brings value to your life, to you as a person, and you can do that through the target language, that's amazing, right? And I think that's one of my favorite things about language learning. It's one of the few hobbies I've ever discovered where like it's a hobby in itself, but once you get really advanced, you can just do all your other hobbies in the language, right? Like it's like this hobby unlocks other ones. But the magic is that it's just more fun, right? Like watching a movie for me in French, for example, it's just more fun than watching it in English. Like there's something special about doing it in the language that you worked so hard to learn. So I love that about language learning. You can better yourself. You can read about woodworking or painting or history or self-help in your target language once you get to the right level. And that's amazing. Okay, I'm failing at ending the stream. Thank you all so much for being here. I'm so sorry if I missed any. I think I got to like 92% of the things in the chat today. So I'm happy. Please do, if you wouldn't mind, when this video gets published, or however you want, leave me a comment. Let me know if you like this live stream, if this is an okay format, right? Because we're going to have another one of these in 2 weeks at the end of the book club. And I'd love to know if you enjoy this format, like just kind of engaging with the chat pretty much the whole time. But anyway, I love this. I enjoyed the storytelling, all the stuff. So thank you all. I'm sending a massive hug to everybody. Unless you don't like hugs, then I will not send the hug to you. But I'll hugs to everybody else, high fives, all the things, good vibes, and see you all next time. Thank you so much for coming. Bye.